Welcome to episode 3 of the 846 podcast. I am Handel joined by my partner in crime, Kevin Joseph.
Good day.
Good to see you, Kevin.
You too.
Today we'll delve into some big news this week in Canada in regards to the Dafonte Miller verdict, carefully read out by Judge Luca. So we'll dive some more into that. Kevin, I'm sure you were one of the 20,000 people watching that.
I was reading an article just a few minutes ago, and it said that was enough people to fill the Air Canada Centre, or should I say Scotiabank Arena.
Yeah.
So when you think about it from that perspective, you're like, wow, okay, that's a lot of people that were paying attention.
Yeah, it's interesting because we talk about race not being an issue in Canada, but I think 20,000 people watching a live feed on YouTube says differently. Yeah. Great interest in this case. The judge was incredible in delivering his decision, being careful to go step by step at how he arrived at the verdict that he did. I know both sides are left unhappy. The defense thinks that they should have walked, and the Crown probably thinks that they should have gotten, I guess, more out of this, the aggravated assault charge, which they didn't prove. Right. What are your thoughts on the verdict as you were watching this unfold?
So for Fast and Furious, I think the verdict, based on the evidence, and I'll come back to that as we talk. Based on the evidence, I think that it seems to be a fair result. I say that a little bit reluctantly because, as we'll talk about, I have some conflicting feelings about what I think the final charge should have been. But I did see Dafonte Miller make a comment that he's satisfied, at least a little bit, the fact that something was done rather than them both walking all together. So, in a quick nutshell, I think something is better than nothing, but we'll have a conversation about what else could have been done.
Yeah, I mean, overall, you're right. This was a roller coaster ride. As I'm listening to the judge deliver his verdict, I'm not sure where he's going.
It was all over the place.
Yeah, as he talks about, I heard a word so often, probably.
Right.
And that's a bad word, which he indicated is a bad word. There was a lot of probably. He talked about the credibility of both the defense and the witnesses, and the victim in this case.
Yeah.
So he really had me gripped by this decision because I really wasn't sure what his ruling was going to be,
right,
where he was going to land. I was satisfied with his explanations, but I too have some thoughts on little bits of messaging that he delivered.
Right.
I want to go back in time to when this first happened, because I think that's probably the first thing we need to touch on. This is back in 2016, only finally getting to verdict in 2020, because there wasn't an immediate response to this. Right. The SIU was not called in, even though there's a civilian injury and there's a police officer involved. For some reason, Durham police thought this wasn't necessary. Not sure if they were confused by the fact that this officer was off duty, but I think it's pretty clear that the SIU must be called in when a civilian is injured. There's some bizarre things too in that arrest. I find it odd that an off-duty Toronto cop is involved in this altercation, this fight, and when Durham police arrive on site, that they let him handcuff the now what do we know victim. At that point, he was the perpetrator, I guess. But they let him handcuff the victim. They let him search the victim. It just seemed as if they needed to take control of the scene.
Right.
That just seems more logical to me. He's off duty.
Right.
At this point, they should be treating him not as a civilian, but not as an officer who is actively involved in this. Like, he should not be the one handcuffing or anything like that. The statements taken on the scene leave a little bit to be desired. It just, again, comes back to, it looks like they're saying, oh, you're a cop? Let's just listen to what you said happened, and that's good enough for us. Right. That seems to be what happened, and then they sort of moved on from there. So then there's this gap before any action really takes place in this case.
Yeah. I want to touch on something real quick, going back to the arrest, and I don't want to say I'm a little foggy in this area, but the allowing Michael Tiro to actually put the handcuffs on him, I think by that point, it's because he's the one that's made the announcement that he's under arrest. So if he's the arresting person, even as a civilian, doesn't mean you need to use handcuffs. But if he's the arresting person, then you're the arresting person.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of technicalities in there, which to me, quite frankly, is neither here nor there. I agree with you 100%. The whole thing right from the beginning just seems a little bit too one-sided. It's, like you said, you're the police officer, so you must know what you're doing. We'll leave it to you. You kind of handle it. You kind of tell us what we need to do. How do we support you? Is kind of the vibe that I got.
Yep.
It wasn't so much like Durham, regional police is showing up saying, let's take control of the situation. It's we're showing up. We quickly figure out that you're a cop, so we kind of let you take the lead. It's kind of the way it made me feel. I'm not sure that's what they did.
I agree.
But it's the way that they made me feel with it. So I hear you on that.
Yeah. I was starting to learn that as much as we're so heavily focused on racism, that there might be another word that we need to watch out for. That word is indifference. There seems to be this general sense of if no one cares about you, then you can be taken advantage of. There's just this mindset of, this kid is a minority, so everyone's sort of he's just another person being processed.
Yeah.
They don't attach to him in any way, shape, or form.
Right.
He's, in their eyes, immediately just another criminal.
Mm-hmm.
Even though prior to this, he had no arrest.
Right.
He had no record.
Yeah.
But to them, that's the view, right? So then the indifference kicks in.
Right.
They just kind of go on autopilot. There's a cop here. This kid did something. Okay, let's take him in. Let's process him. Let's charge him with assaulting a cop, running away. Let's do the laundry list of things we're going to charge him with. Because ultimately, no one cares about that kid.
Right.
We can do whatever we feel like. So this indifference thing is starting to creep in a lot, and you see it in a lot of these cases. It's not just black or white now. It's just a sense of if no one cares about you, we can take advantage of you.
And you know what? I want to agree with you on the fact that I think that race is obviously an issue. This is the real world. Yeah. Racism exists. There are a lot of things that are attached to race and hate crimes and all that kind of stuff, right? But I want to be careful not to say that everything right off the bat is about race.
Yeah.
I'm not going to doubt that there's some connection to it somewhere in the back of somebody's head. Probably yes. But you're right. I think it's like you say, here's this kid who's breaking into cars, which we find out later is apparently part of the evidence. And it's just some young punk who's out doing nothing good with their life in the middle of the night. So whoever the adult is we're going to follow you. And so if it was a white kid that was breaking into cars and got beat up by these guys, and to the extent that Dafonte Miller got beat up, it's probably still going to be the same thing. Some young punk in the middle of the night. What are you doing out at 1 o'clock in the morning? Yeah. We're just going to treat you a certain way and just put you through the process.
Yep.
Yes, there's race issues there somewhere, but it's not always about the race, I think. I think you're right. We need to look at other words just so that we don't lose the sort of the mindset behind what we're trying to achieve and raise issues on. It's another situation where people of authority kind of misbehave or overreach, as we've said before. Yeah. And while we can look at the race issue, let's take a focus on the facts that at a minimum is people that are sometimes in authority who are overreaching in the way that they behave.
Yeah. So for those of you who are not familiar, Dafonte Miller is a 19-year-old youth who we first heard about in December of 2016, where he is beaten by an off-duty police officer and his brother because they say he broke into their truck. They pursued him, cornered him, beat him in the course of making an arrest. That's the sort of the story that was outlined. And then we learned, as all the details are revealed by the judge, that potentially this kid was out breaking into cars that night with two other friends, stealing small change, whatever's in the car that they can take. And then they encountered the home of this police officer and his brother, who happened to be still up late at night, and they pursued him, cornered him between a couple of houses, and then the rest is now history. So this case took a while to get going, again, because the SIU was not brought in immediately. And the judge, I thought, did a great job at highlighting where the system is also failing, right? Where the system, to a certain degree, kind of fails us all by not getting the best result.
Right.
Because not even the charges might have been appropriate, which we learned during the course of this judge's decision. I want to ask you about the Crown and the way they pursue these cases. I find that, again, this is that sense of indifference for me. Here's a 19-year-old kid from limited means, couldn't afford a lawyer, had to, raise money to get the right lawyer on board who could support the case. I'm assuming there's going to be a civil component to this. And that's probably how he's able to get a lawyer of quality.
Yeah.
But I feel as if sometimes a prosecution, for lack of a better term, kind of mails it in. This is not a high priority case for them.
Right.
So let's just get this thing on the docket, get it through, and get it over with. I feel like that might have happened here, based on what the end result is.
Right.
And the fact that the judge was willing to point out that this charge is not in front of him. He can't even find him guilty of the right charge because it's no longer on the prosecution.
This is why I go back, and I made the comment earlier about I want to be pragmatic and I want to be practical about the way we approach this topic, and I think other topics as well. And it's this. I know we're all very emotional about, again, black kid, white cop. Forget the fact that he's off duty, but black kid, white cop.
Yeah.
And we're all emotional about the race issues, especially right now when there's so many things bubbling up in the world. So when we start from the beginning and we look at the charges that are laid, you got to ask, it's based on the evidence. Now, both the Crown and the defense can really, and this is how law works, you have to argue the facts of evidence, not emotion, not what we think. And Judge DeLuca made that reference in the beginning of his opening statements, right?
Yeah.
That against the backdrop of what's going on in the world right now, his job is to go based on the evidence. And I think when you look at the case and the matter of the case, you have to be able to lay charges that you can prove, because that's the issue. It's not proving what we think people will be emotional about. It's proving, based on the evidence, what's the most likely charge that we can get conviction on.
Yep.
And knowing the matters of the case, we know that the aggravated assault charge includes things like wounds, maims, disfigures, but you got to be able to prove when that happened within the timeline of this incident. And if you can't prove it within a certain timeline of that incident, there's got to be a backstep. And I think there's another charge that was missing. As you talked about, if the backdrop is assault, he can only rule on what's presented in front of him. I think there might have been a better chance to lay more of a assault with weapon,
which is the one that was missing,
which is the one that's the in between assault and aggravated assault. I don't understand, and maybe I need to do a little bit more research, but I don't understand why that charge wasn't laid. Because you have and from a sentencing perspective, it's a higher sentence than assault.
Yeah.
So to me, there's a missing link here, and that's something that I'd like to look into a little bit more. But you're right. I think we need to look at, before we get emotional, let's take a step back and go, where did this case go sideways?
Yeah.
And one of those areas could have been in the charges that were laid to begin with.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we talked about it with Rashad Brooks. Right. Those charges, if that ends up going to trial as is, he's going to walk. Because no one's going to find him guilty and give him life sentence based on the evidence that's going to be presented. Right. So that's one of those scenarios, again, where you've got to decide what are you trying to accomplish here and make sure the charges are the right charges. Like in the case of Atlanta, they're just being, in my opinion, political and trying to be a hero and be the one that does something big and strong. Yeah. In this case, I think it might just be, I don't want to say sloppy work, but like I say, there's indifference. It's just another case. They need to just push it through, get it over with. No one knows this person. Away we go, right?
And I'll admit, I'm no legal expert. You know what I mean? I can read, but I'm no legal expert, just to put it out there. But I think if you read enough, you can kind of read between the lines, and it's not that difficult to figure out things that you could have, or angles you could have used to help make this case. And so you're right. I think sometimes it makes you wonder, and I don't want to get into the whole thing about, lawyers you're paying for, or other lawyers that are given to you sort of at the city's cost or the country's cost. But I wonder if you're not paying for certain things, are you getting the best quality that you can pay for?
True.
I don't know. I don't know if that's where the indifference kind of creeps in, where it's like you said, it's just, let's just get it on the docket. Let's put something there that seems reasonable and let's kind of keep moving. Would it have been different if it was, and again, I don't know the status. Was he paying for this lawyer? Was he not paying for the lawyer?
Yeah.
I don't know those details, so that's why I can't really comment too much on that side of it.
Right.
But sometimes it does make you feel like there's some indifference, because when you see the charges that are laid and then the technicalities as to why people get off of those charges, it really makes you go, then why do we keep laying these types of charges in the future, right?
Now, I know most of you probably didn't see this, but this was probably the best piece of theater I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
Watching this judge go through step by step how he arrived at the decision, talk about the credibility of the witnesses, just break it down. This thing was gripping.
It was meticulous.
Yeah, but this was great TV. I couldn't stop watching it. I was like, this is amazing. This is
4 hours and change.
4.5 hours. I didn't even realize it was 4.5 hours, but this thing was great.
Right.
I love that the judge was willing to point out what his opinions were, but recognizing that his opinions don't factor into the decision.
Right.
I love that he was willing to say to the officer, I believe you left your home in pursuit of that young man to teach him a lesson.
Right.
Not just to make an
It's
arrest.
retribution.
Yeah, this wasn't about just making an arrest. At no point was it, right? And so, he's willing to lay that out there, even though he knows, I can't find him guilty of anything here related to the assault, really, other than the common assault. But the way he even explains it, I was looking at some of the comments online after, and it's so split.
Right.
A lot of people are saying, Judge DeLuca, he's just saying all these nice things about the probables, and like everybody else, he doesn't do anything. He just lets him walk. Right. But then there are other people who are saying the opposite, which is, wow, I was really surprised that he did bring back a guilty at all in this case.
Right.
I thought he was leaning towards there's not enough here to charge an officer with an assault. But turns out, no, he actually led down the path of just looking at the facts and nothing else. Now, I did some looking into this judge, and apparently he's a former defense attorney and has defended a lot of brown and black and native people over the years. So, so he might have been the right judge for a case like this, but still, he was very balanced.
Right.
There was no one-sidedness to the scale at all. He let everyone know where they stood. Now, I'm going to ask you, after you've seen this trial and we've gotten this verdict in this officer, do you think this changes anything in our landscape in Canada? Does this change? Did anything happen as a result of this?
Good question. I don't think so. I hope so.
Yeah, I didn't get that feeling either.
Yeah, I hope so, but I don't think so. And this is why my angle is very much about, folks, we have to look at evidence. We have to look at facts.
Yeah.
And I think when we start looking at those types of things, it will really truly help us understand how the system works. Because a lot of people are out there saying, oh, the system is failing us and the system sucks. But are we actually looking at the system, or are we just looking at the judge that made this decision and let him walk?
Yeah.
And there's a difference between those two things. Because the system that we're complaining about, yes, it may have white judges or white police officers. And again, if we keep sticking to this whole race thing, right? And then, yes, we've got people of color, indigenous individuals, stuff like that on the opposite side. We look at that and we go, the system is broken. But again, we look at our system and how it functions is based on evidence. And so, yes, while we think, okay, well, yeah, the cop got convicted, so, or he's been charged and convicted with the assault at least, it doesn't change much because the system is still the system. The system is still based on evidence. So I think for people, when you ask the question, is like, do you think it changes much? What I immediately think of is, does it change the minds of people? And I think people are still very making their opinions and their assessments on emotion and on what they think versus on the way the system actually works. And I'm not defending the system in any way, shape, or form. There's a difference between what I think, because in the outset, am I angry and am I upset that these, because to me, the brother, although the brother got off, to me, I think he should have been minimum as well, gotten the assault as well. But that's just me.
Yeah.
But when I go back to Judge DeLuca and I go back to the evidence, and quite frankly, to be honest with you, and I try to be very open, when I first heard about this case, and I heard about it originally, the way I understood it, black kid, walking in the neighborhood, two white guys come out of nowhere, beat the crap out of him, he loses an eye. Full stop. That's all I knew.
Yeah.
So, of course, you go, oh, my God, this is an easy case. Put them in jail.
Yeah.
But then when I listened for 4.5 hours to this judge meticulously walk through the case, and at some points I was like, man, can we get on with it? Yeah. But that's the problem. I think we all just say, let's just get through this and give him a conviction. Because, well, hold on a second. Let's understand what happened based on the facts.
Yeah.
And when you go through the facts, you go, okay, like as much as I don't like the result, I get it.
Yeah.
And that's where I say a lot of people won't take the time, and I'm encouraging people to take the time to understand these things. And so I don't know. I'm a little bit still conflicted in my head. There's things that I'd like to see, but if I look at the facts, I go, I get it.
Yeah, I haven't been to a judge's decision like this before, just truthfully. Right. But I'd say one thing. If this is the way it's always done, I doubt it is, this is really good because he really explains, A, why he made the charge, and B, he also explained why he didn't charge the brother. Because in his opinion, the assault happens after the initial scuffle, where they're beating him in between the two houses. Right. He believes the assault happened when the kid has now been beaten, is escaping for safety. Yeah. He goes to that person's house, bangs on the door for help, and is saying, call 911, call 911. Right. He believes that that's the moment that now it's an assault. Right. You're no longer just trying to arrest him, right? Where he comes to the door and the officer strikes him with that pipe at the person's door because he's seeking refuge. Yeah. He's no longer engaging him.
And you got to remember the defense, their perspective is self-defense.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
It's not self-defense if the person you're defending yourself against is retreating from their assault.
Right, and seeking help.
Right, they're seeking help. So you have an opportunity now to go, okay, the person's left me. They're no longer attacking me, so I step back and run for shelter myself.
Right. So that's why he gets the charge.
Right.
And that's why the brother doesn't have the charge because he's not involved there.
He removed himself prior to that.
Right.
And that's where the threshold for self-defense
I thought that was reasonable. Right. That was reasonable judgment that says, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. He's not retreating. Right. If you say he was fighting with you in between the two houses, he's not fighting anymore. Right. He's begging for help. Now, some background, they had never identified, Michael had never identified himself as a police officer during the entire pursuit. Right. So as far as this kid concerned, this is a homeowner chasing him and beating him. Right. More reason to seek help and not understand that you might be under arrest or whatever it might be. Because for some reason, which I don't understand how it's possible. If you say you left your house to go make this arrest, how do you never say you're a cop? Right. How do you never scream police? Right. Stop.
And you would think, as a police officer, that's just what you do inherently. Because you do it all the time.
Because that wasn't his intent, right? His intent doesn't appear to be just making an arrest, or you would go with, hey, I'm a cop, you know?
Yeah. And I'm going to go back because you made a reference to the fact that the cop had hit him with the pipe while Dafonte was knocking on this person's door looking for help. So this is why I go back to that assault charge.
Yeah. They blew it.
So you blew it. I mean, and think about this. Assault, maximum conviction is 5 years, or maximum penalty is 5 years. Assault with a weapon is 10 years. Aggravated assault is 14 years. So now, okay, if you're going to a lesser, you've gone from a possible, which I knew he was never going to get anyways, but a maximum of 14 years down to a maximum of 5. You blew it.
Yeah.
You had an opportunity to lay a charge that would have gotten him an additional 5 years. You see what I'm saying? To drop it to 10. And so, to me, why I don't understand is, okay, well, the assault, we know that he hit him with a pipe while he was in the retreat stage. How did we miss the opportunity to lay that charge? If all the evidence and all full disclosure and everything is coming out, that's where I'm like, oh, man.
So for me, it comes down to the same thing in the end. They missed that charge because in their mind, Dafonte Miller doesn't matter. He doesn't matter. It's not a case on the docket we need to get through. Let's see what we can get. Just get it done. Let's move on already.
You see, I think it can also be, it could also be tunnel vision. And again, I'm going to keep saying, I don't know these lawyers. I don't know if they're getting paid. If they're not getting paid, that's not my business. But I look at, the fact that they're representing a person, and I think their tunnel vision is, and I think a lot of people who are watching this case look at, he gets beat up, he loses an eye, how did these guys get off? And you're trying to focus on, again, the evidence of at what point in this whole melee did he actually lose his eye? And I think if they were focusing strictly on, let's get a conviction, or try to get a conviction, based on pipe hits eye equals guilty, that's where you miss the step. Because you're like, well, what if the pipe didn't? And that's what happened. You have all these medical doctors, pathologists that are giving witness testimony saying that based on the evidence, it wasn't a pipe that hit him in the eye.
There's reasonable doubt.
Could
be just the punches.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And again, if that's what happened prior to or within the realm of what self-defense would have been, then you can't lay that charge for this. You see what I'm saying? So it's like we got to be very meticulous and not just have tunnel vision on looking at, okay, well, he lost it, because it's a comment I see in a lot of posts. Yeah. He lost an eye. Yes, he did. I hate it that he lost an eye. Young kid, 19 years old, losing your sight. Yeah. I mean, I'm, again, in my 40s, and I would be detrimental to me if I lost my sight. The young kid. But again, it's not like, the pipe equals eye, and I think that's where we need to be a little bit careful.
Yeah, it was a case that almost never happened. I'm glad it happened. I'm glad we got to the point of actually having an arrest, getting to this judge trial, and actually getting a conviction of that officer. Something had to happen. You can't just have vigilante-type justice, especially from an officer.
Right.
He should have known better. I know in the heat of the moment, someone's breaking into your car, you want to do something about it. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised it went that far for what it is, but it did.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know, we'll never know if race plays a factor or not.
Right.
We know race plays a factor in the end result, in my opinion.
Right.
This sense of indifference, again, where no one really worries about Dafonte Miller, just another black kid who was doing something wrong.
Right.
Let's just get him through the system, run up the charges. I love a point the judge made in saying that Dafonte was justified to fear the law.
Absolutely.
Because look at what happens in the end. Mm-hmm. He gets beaten, and he ends up with a long list of charges. Right. Again, this judge was really bold in reading his decision, highlighting all the ways that the system is coming up short.
Right.
Because, he gets beaten up and he ends up with the charges, like a long list of charges that could easily, if no one did anything, that'd be the end of it. Mm-hmm. He just has this long list of charges. Everyone says, hey, that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
Just move on. Case closed. We know what happened here. It's easy to see. Mm-hmm. I do have one thing that troubled me.
Okay.
And it didn't help his case, but again, I'm not in his shoes, right? That they decided to stick with the story that they were not breaking into cars.
Right.
Right. Now, I don't know with certainty that they were breaking into cars, but there's just a high probability based on the evidence. The judge agrees. There's just a high probability that that's what happened.
Right.
Right. But this kid, he's stuck with that response.
Right.
Even in the post-judgment press conference.
Right.
A reporter asked him, hey, what do you think of the judge saying that you guys were out breaking into cars that night? And he still insists, we were not breaking into cars that night. Right. We were just out. But
yeah, and you know what? If that's been his position the whole way through, it would look a little weird if all of a sudden he's like, on second thought. So of course he's going to stick to his story. And again, I don't know either. I wasn't there. Yeah. I don't know, but if you go based on, again, evidence and witness testimony and his friends who were contradicting his story and all that kind of stuff. But I think the important thing is people will always say, and I kind of agree, is like, what does it matter? Like, okay, he was breaking into cars. I'll give you an example. I was watching, I don't want to call it the radio station, but there's a radio station, local radio station that had posted the verdict afterwards. Okay. And a lot of people were commenting. And this person, one person, doesn't matter what race they were, but one person made a comment about the fact that, it's kind of like you play stupid games, you get stupid prizes. Right? It's basically saying, well, you're all breaking into cars, well, what do you expect? And so I wrote a response to this person, and I asked a question, and I said, so does a woman who works in the sex trade industry deserve to be raped?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I get it. It's a risky business.
Yeah.
And yeah, I might look at it and go, wow, why would you do that? Why would you break into cars? Why would you work in the sex trade? But just because you may work in the sex trade doesn't mean you deserve to be assaulted.
Of course not.
Right? So it comes down to, it doesn't really matter what you were doing in advance. At the end of the day, okay, you're breaking into someone's car, if you were. They run up and they stop you and they try to get their stuff back. Cool. But to beat you, get your stuff back. Stop the person. Hold them for the police if you need to in some reasonable way that isn't excessive force. Do that. I get that. But you can't just now have people thinking it's cool to just, well, as long as you're doing something stupid, you deserve what you get. I understand that as an adult, and I teach my kid, you're responsible for your actions. Yeah. So I'm not, you want to do something stupid and you get caught for it, well, you got caught for it. But I'm not going to be okay with someone being overreaching and excessive in the way that they handle you. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I know a little bit troubling that he's sticking to his story about not breaking into cars. Again, I say that loosely because I wasn't there and I don't know. And it's only those who were involved that actually know what was happening,
sure,
regardless of what the courts say and the decision says. Yeah. But it really doesn't matter what he was doing.
Agree. But let's say he wasn't breaking into cars.
Right.
I try to put myself in his shoes. He's got a good lawyer. Mm-hmm. He has his mom there with him at this press conference. Mm-hmm. They've had some time. I think about 90 minutes had gone by since the judgment. Okay. Couldn't someone prepare him for what this was going to be like? Like, he did not come over very favorable. Right. He's angry. He's jaded. He's not happy. Right. I don't expect him to be happy, just to be clear. Yeah, absolutely. Right? But he wasn't well prepared for this. He gets that question, and I just feel like if it's me and I wasn't breaking into cars, I'd probably say, listen, I just appreciate the verdict. All that's in the past, and I'm looking ahead. Right. Yeah. But he needed to take it on again one more time and say, I don't care what the judge said. I know what I was doing. Yeah. Like, someone could have prepared him for that and said, hey, here's what we're doing with this. Because they have a civil case to come, I'm sure. All right, for sure. For millions of dollars. Oh. Someone should have prepared him for this statement. I mean, it's either he was prepared, he was prepared by somebody else, and it went out the window. Which is quite possible. You're sitting in the spotlight of the media. You got cameras on you and microphones in front of you. Like, it could be a little bit jading for you, jarring for you. He did go through an extremely traumatic experience. Of course, I don't expect him to come out of that feeling good. I mean, you were chased, beaten, senseless. It's also been struck with a pipe.
It's also been a number of years, though.
Yeah, I know, but you got arrested, you got dragged. All this happened. So I don't know if I have any place to really criticize how he presented himself at the press conference. Right. But I was disappointed that he wasn't prepared for questions like that, because they're coming. They're coming again in the civil case. Right. And
I agree with you, and I think that's the whole point of sort of the conversation a little bit too, is that are we preparing people to go through these things, or are they just kind of being flung through the motions? Okay, you get your charges. Okay, good, they're dropped. Okay, let's just lay a few charges and keep moving. Yeah. And then when we're done, we're not properly going to prepare you. Like, are we taking the time to go, let's give everything we have to this to make sure we have the right charges, we're presenting ourselves the right way, we look a certain way in front of the media. Like you said, all these questions are going to come. So someone has to be giving him some training, giving him some words of wisdom. Here's what we need to say. Here's how you deflect the question. Are we taking the time to really prep people for this, or are they just being kind of flung and dragged through the mud and through the motions? Yeah, maybe I owe Dafonte Miller an apology for even making that statement, because I just think that experience, I don't know what that was like. Right. I don't think I could survive one day in jail, just for the record. Yeah. So I don't know what that experience was like. So maybe he has a right to be jaded and to be angry. I had an experience in the U.S. over 20 years ago. I remember like it was yesterday. Right. Because it sticks with you. Yeah. It doesn't just go away. You don't just wake up and say, oh, that was 20 years ago. I'm done with it. Right. I'm not done with it. I could talk about it like it just happened 5 minutes ago. Right. So imagine his situation is a violent situation. What must he be thinking? Right. What must he be thinking in that? I think I have no right to actually say he could have presented better at the press conference because he just went through a ridiculous experience. Yeah, and you know what? Listen, and let's be clear. We're not here trying to judge him at all. Like you said, it's very emotional situation, traumatic situation that he's went through. So it's not, and it's easy. It's always easy, as we say, to Monday morning quarterback and give our opinions afterwards, and it's throwing no shade at him whatsoever. At the end of the day, he's gone through what he's gone through. The verdict has come down, things that can't be changed now. But okay, well, in the end, let's try to do whatever we can to rally around him and help kind of make things change so that when these situations happen, people are prepared the right way. It's not about saying, okay, you know what, he's wrong for acting a certain way. He's not a reporter. He's not a lawyer. He's not a media person. Likely has no formal media training. So, yeah, we're not trying to say, oh, well, what was he doing and why was he acting that way? You're right. It's emotions. And the same people you're sitting watching the verdict come down to the people that assaulted you. It's easy to not be in your right mind and to think the way you think. So it's not. I know we're not trying to say anything negative about him here. Like it's not. That's not what it's about, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it was an interesting case for sure. I mean, I haven't seen anything like that in Canada before, where you get to really be a part of the verdict and really get to hear what's going on. So that's one of the great things about how we can have transparency now with everything being able to be online.
Well, the thing is I mean, I know that our legal system here, it's an open court. So, if this was if it was actually in a courtroom, not because of COVID, if it was an open courtroom, as many people that can fit in that courtroom, you're free to walk in and go sit and watch. And that's kind of what I was saying is I used to do this years ago. I had really interested in courts. On my days off from work, I would actually go down to Old City Hall or go to the courts on University and just be nosy and sit in the case.
Yeah.
And just listen. And I think the important thing I would say is we need to educate ourselves. And I said this in our last podcast. When injustice is done, be vocal, be upset, like make your voice heard. But I encourage people to do it with an educated mind, right? And I said, if you can go to the case, in this one it was online, so we can all do it from the comfort of your home. And as much as we may not like the verdict, but when you understand where the verdict comes from, it makes it a little easier to maybe not, I won't say accept, but I guess that's the right word, is to accept it. Yep. Because you're going based on all the little intricacies that you don't know about. Yeah. And like I said, I admitted earlier, when I first heard this case, it was a very open and shut situation. It doesn't change my mind about Dafonte Miller, the fact that, big words, if he was breaking into vehicles. It doesn't change anything for me. I don't go, oh, okay, well, yeah, he deserves to have lost his eye. That's not going to change that for me. But it makes me go, okay, now I understand the whole picture, and I understand how they were responding, the brothers, and what happened. But we got to do it with an open understanding of what the facts are.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think this is why sometimes people don't listen when we argue cases. We're arguing out of emotion. We're arguing out of, quite frankly, ignorance. And I don't say that in a negative way. Ignorance literally meaning I don't know. And if I don't know all the facts and I'm making an argument for something, it's easy for people to shut it down. Because, well, I'm not speaking from a mindful place. I'm speaking just out of ignorance.
Yeah.
So important for us to, be open. I love the fact that it was online. I wish more they could do this more often. Hopefully, this is one of the new norms that come out of COVID.
Yeah, because I mean,
instead of
getting a couple hundred people, well, I'm not sure how many people fit in a courtroom, but
and if it's a small, even if it's 100 people,
we got 20,000,
20,000 people,
which is great.
Now you have much more people aware of what happened.
Yeah. So I mean, this was definitely a fascinating case. I hope everyone goes out and looks at it, look at Judge DeLuca's decision, because I thought it was very fair, thoroughly explained. I was really satisfied with it. If everyone took that approach really to all of these cases, we'd be better off. Right. It was just only based on the facts, only what you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt. He didn't accept anything below that standard. If it couldn't be proven, he didn't accept it. And I think that's the fairest model.
Yeah, and you know what? I know on canley.org, you can actually download the judge's verdict and his whole reasoning. I've seen one of the local newspapers, I think, also posted a link to the actual verdict as well. So look that up. I think you're right. I agree with you 100%. People, my thing is I want people to be educated. We can be angry, we can be upset, we can still fight for justice, but we need to be educated. And I think that's an important thing. But I know we could be here all day talking about this because it was such a very interesting case. But I think it's time for us to sort of turn it over to the viewers, those of you who are watching. This is a time, as we always say, to have your say, join the conversation. We're interested to find out, what are your thoughts? Did you watch the verdict live while it was on YouTube? Did you download, or will you download, the actual reading of the verdict from the Judge DeLuca? But have your say in the comments below. Every time we do these podcasts, we do it not just to have a conversation for ourselves, but for you, the viewers, as well. So have your say in the comments below. Let us know what your thoughts are on the whole entire case, the verdict. If you found this video helpful, you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Like the video, share it. Sharing it is caring, as they say, right? Sharing is caring. So share the video, and most importantly, subscribe. We've got a lot more videos coming, a lot of conversations coming on the 846 podcast. We're looking forward to seeing you on the next video. Take care.